Welcome to Modern Mystic Messages. I'm Teresa. Thank you so much for stopping by and clicking on the video. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're returning, what's up? Welcome back, soul family. In any event, I'm happy that you're here and happy Independence Day to you if you're actually watching this on the day that I'm uploading it. And truthfully, even if you're not, happy Independence Day anyway, because I was thinking about Independence Day today. And I honestly wonder. I kind of debated whether I was going to say anything about it or not because, quite honestly, I have an indigenous autochthonous heritage here. I have a Choctaw and Blackfoot heritage, so my feelings about Independence Day and Thanksgiving are kind of mixed. So I try not to steer too far into those waters, but it did make me stop and reflect a little bit. If you think about the story that we're told, and I get it, our history has been altered. I'm not getting into all of that, but if we just take the basics of it, today reflects a day, a point in time where our founding fathers had decided enough is enough. They refused to accept or bend to or be governed by the auspices of the British Empire any longer. They said that that rule was unacceptable, it was oppressive, and they had decided that they were ready to strike out on their own and govern themselves. It was their big "you're not the boss of me" moment. That's what today basically established moving forward. Of course, they had been here in the colonies for a number of time, even had skirmishes where other countries had tried to come in and colonize and all of that. That whole, because initially, remember, it was founded under ships that flew the Portuguese flag, and then the Spanish tried to change, or the sailor was Portuguese, the flags were Spanish, the da 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 da, and eventually it handed off to the English, and finally the forefathers that signed the Declaration of Independence said, we're going to run our own show from here on out. And whether you agree with whether or not they should have done the home invasion or any of the rest of that stuff, that's completely immaterial to where I'm going today. Because truthfully, it made me think about every black sheep, starseed, light worker, uh, whatever you identify as along the spiritual awakening journey, that this is a time, whether it's today, tomorrow, next week, whenever you want, to really sit back and claim or reclaim or rededicate your spiritual independence. And I say that with all due respect because I understand, at least, and again, as I was thinking about this, I do realize, and I get a lot of feedback that the things that resonate with me resonate with a lot of you too. So I'm willing to be vulnerable and authentic and speak out for the sake of accountability for whomever it resonates with. Because I do realize along my journey, I looked the other day, which by the way, we're getting a little scattered in the conversation. I actually have gone ahead and broken down the videos over time into various playlists. And that actually started, I've been away for 3 days off of the channel. 2 days ago, after I uploaded 3 days ago, the following day when I was attempting to record for the channel, something is going on with my memory, my phone storage, and YouTube. YouTube is taking up over half of my phone's available storage. And even though I was supposed to have storage available, I got like 10 minutes into a reading and I got a message saying that my storage was full. I couldn't even finish it. So I spent hours deleting playlists and undoing this and trying to get rid of this and that to create more space in the phone. And to some degree it worked and to some degree it didn't. I was upset because I truthfully got rid of almost all of my private playlist, but it didn't make a huge difference. But we're going to rock out and see how that goes. At some point down the line, I may have to figure out something else, but I think I'm going to be okay to record for now. But in doing that, I did get rid of some of my older private or unlisted videos, readings I had done for other people, things like that to create more space. And I even got rid of a few of my older videos from a couple years ago, older readings and things. But I also created playlists so that, because I do notice we're getting new folks into the Soul Family all the time, but there are some really key videos back then that were really good stuff that aren't really getting played. So I made separate playlists so that if you want to go back and look at some of that older content, it'll be easier to sort through without having to scroll through hundreds of videos to get to them. So hopefully that'll be helpful for you. But when I did that, I had to go back to the very first video that I did on this channel. And it was a statement of purpose and dedication. And at the time that I did it, I was very sincere, but at the time that I did it, I had not yet come to fully understand who Yahweh was. So my initial dedication to this channel, I basically had to resend it and redo it because to a large extent, I had to declare within myself a state of spiritual independence from the dragon, from what I understood, who I understood Yahweh to be. My allegiance, if you will, my loyalty, if you will, didn't really shift because it's always been about Yeshua, but my understanding of who Yeshua was rolling with had to change. So in that aspect, a lot of stuff changed since then. And it made me think, as we start progressing and learning and reshifting and sifting through our mind space, as we deprogram and release our worship gene, shut it off, however you want to call it, deactivate it, and deactivate a lot of the base programming that we came here, well, we didn't come here with it, the base programming our handlers initially installed in us. Those programs run deep and they play out real long and sometimes are very hard to fully deactivate. And it comes a point in time where we have to be comfortable enough with breaking away from that programming to be willing to declare our spiritual independence and not feel guilty about that. That's the part. Because the moment I say declare spiritual independence, I know there's going to be a whole bunch of Christians, Muslims, and Jews clutching their pearls about how dare I say that. We're not supposed to be going off on our own. We're not, even though the scriptures tell you to examine these things and use discernment for yourself. But you can't be independent of God. Well, you can if your God is a destroyer and you find out you've been lied to. You're supposed to. That's what Yeshua told us to do. So many of us are so busy trying to please Yahweh that we completely ignore Yeshua. We bend our knee to the religion that bears his name, even though that religion has nothing to do with him. And we do that. We bend our knee to Christianity to the expense and at the risk of ignoring everything the actual Christ had to say. Think about that. Saying that you are a Christian stands in direct defiance to what the actual Christ said and stood for. He kept telling those people, you do not know my Father. You worship your father, the devil. I am not from here. And it's very clear that the Elohim who loved him and claimed him was not the same one who allowed him to be put unalive. That doesn't even make sense. The Elohim that was out there tempting him when he was going through his initiation fast. Oh, if you say you're a God, tell the angels to come and minister to you. Tell the stones to do this. Throw yourself down. You know they'll not allow a hair on your head to be hurt. He was literally taunting Yeshua in his most vulnerable moment. That's not a God that we should be serving. And it's not a God that Yeshua was serving. That was his enemy, his nemesis in that moment. So it's perfectly okay, expected, applauded in the heavenly realm when we declare our independence from that and choose differently. Like I said, we don't have to stick with choose this day whom we'll serve just because that's what Moses and Abraham chose. They had a right to choose. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today, and it's interesting because Christianity would have us believe that there is only one God, because that's the lie that Yahweh told. But that's not even what the Jews believed. They were not monotheistic up until that point. They chose to become, and it's not even that they were truly monotheistic, because truthfully, in a real monotheistic society, they don't believe that any other God exists. And the Jews knew better than that, because they had been serving another God just last week. Remember when Yahweh and Moses abandoned them at the foot of Mount Sinai? Or was it Mount Moriah? Whichever mount they were at when they came out of Egypt. Yahweh took Moses up into the mountain to give him the law, and he was gone for 40 days. They didn't even know if he was coming back. And they went back, they reverted back to worshiping the God that they had been worshiping before they signed on for Yahweh, because they didn't even know the rules for worshiping Yahweh. So they went back to what they knew. So it's not like the Jews didn't know there were other Elohim around. They had been worshiping other Elohim, serving other Elohim. The scriptures tell us that Abram was Lamech's son, I think. Yeah. Abram left out of the temple of Nanasan, Nanar. That was another of the Elohim, the Anunnaki, that's mentioned in the Lost Book. Nanar, I think, was a son of Enki as well. But Nanasan, later on I think the Babylonian pantheon, he kind of got merged. He was like a moon god, so to speak. But Lamech and Abraham were scribes in the temple of Nanasan. So they knew there were other Elohim around. They just said, choose this day whom you will serve. And they chose Yahweh. And the rest of the world went for the okie doke as if that's the only game in town. They chose the absolute short straw, the worst of the Elohim that they could possibly have chosen to give their allegiance to. They chose the most violent one, the most misogynistic one, the most everything. The most disloyal, the most dishonest. Remember, he promised the land of Canaan to Abraham. And by the time Moses got around, the Israelites still hadn't gotten the land of Canaan. How many hundreds or thousands of years passed between Abraham and Moses? And he was still promising that same piece of land to this displaced people, led them 40 years around the desert on an 11-mile trip that shouldn't have took them more than a week. Because he was mad at them because they didn't bow and scrape low enough for him. So just to F with them, when they left Egypt, the trip to the land of Canaan should have only taken them about a week. It was 11 miles, and instead it took them 40 years to get there. And half of the people that was promised the land of Canaan never got to set foot in it, including the one that laid his very neck on the line to get the nation of Israel out of Egypt for Yahweh. He set Moses up for that okie doke, and Moses literally put his life on the line to talk those people into leaving Egypt for Yahweh. And yet Yahweh made up a sorry behind excuse and refused to allow that man to enter the land of Canaan. He was allowed to go sit up on the mountaintop and look over into the land of Canaan. Hebrews 11:40 tells us that none of the men and women of old, the faithful men and women of old, Abraham, Moses, Rahab, Job, it names them on and on and on and on. Long laundry list of all of those people they named in the Bible that were so faithful to Yahweh. And yet at the end of Hebrews, it says, none of those people saw their wishes fulfilled in this earthly plane because Yahweh felt like their faith should be sufficient. And yet this is what we still choose. We have a right to declare independence from that, people. We truthfully have an obligation to declare independence from that, because that is a generational curse that has been handed down to us by the poor choices of our ancestors over thousands of years, whether we are Christian, Jewish, or Muslim. They all chose to align themselves with a dishonest interloper who purported himself to be Almighty God, even though he was not. And there's plenty of ancient documentation to prove he was not, if we would only open our minds and our hearts to see it and believe it and understand that. We do not have to continue to subjugate ourselves to that on that hope that if we get it right and if we don't displease him, we might not burn up in a fiery hell and we suffered and life is crap here on earth, but if we can just hang in there long enough, it's going to get better when we get to heaven. Really? Really? Is that how we're going to rock on forever? Because they keep kicking that can up. Truthfully, and even if we believe the end of the book, it's got to get so bad. Life will get so bad on earth that it ain't safe for nobody. So bad, in fact, that it forces Yeshua and the archangels and literally the four horsemen of the apocalypse to come here and clean this mess up. But even at that, what does that book say? Now, again, I didn't make it up. It's in there. It's in the rule book that they gave you. Even though that book, we know it's kind of a mashed up amalgamation of a whole lot of different ancient texts. But just based on the book that they put there, if you take that book at face value, at the end of it, it tells you that that dragon, Satan, Yahweh, Jehovah, because he is Satan of Eden, if you understood that term instead of believing what the church told you back in the age when our ancestors couldn't read. They accepted the lie that Satan was this devilish creature instead of being another of Yahweh's titles. But if you understand that that's one of Yahweh's titles, at the end of Revelation, it tells us that Yahweh will be destroyed along with all who choose to follow him. And then at the end of all of that, the other, more compassionate Elohim will come back with a new base camp at the end of the Anunnaki War, when all of this unaliving and destruction is over and done with, when the smoke clears. They expect for there to be a ragtag group of survivors. Who are those? Oh, the sheep, the chosen ones, the black sheep, the ones that everybody said was crazy and wrong, the ones that refused to give their allegiance to the dragon, the ones that refused to fight in those wars, the ones that refused to continue to starve out their brothers and sisters and allow famine on the earth, the ones that refused to pick up weapons and fight for political factions and what have you, and follow the greed on this planet, those that refused Yahweh's way of being are the ones that came and threw themselves at the foot of the throne at the mercy of the new Elohim that was going to come after Yahweh has been deposed. And it says he comes down with this new Jerusalem shining like a jewel, the new base camp. And he basically gets rid of sickness, war, poverty, starvation, and worship, and says, we're going to move forward in peaceful communion. Go read Revelation if you don't believe me. It's in there. We just get so caught up in all of the what does the dragon mean and what does the harlot mean and all of the symbology, because the church does that. They do a lot of throwing of a rock and hiding their hands. They want you to stay caught up in all of the convoluted interpretations that they have assigned to the scriptures, when truthfully it don't even need no interpretation. You just need reading. Some of it can, I mean, I get it, it's some of it's mystical scripture, but again, everything in the scriptures is layered. But if you actually look at that, it tells you what's going to happen. And it is our responsibility, if we want to save ourselves and our progeny, our ancestral lines, that we can break those ancestral curses by being bold enough to declare our independence from them and step away from it. That's all we got to do. That's all we got to do. I ain't going to talk too much more about that. I'm going to let that go. Because, yeah, but it was on my mind today. The other thing that I did want to talk about, and you know what though? I'm going to take that one someplace different, because it's a whole different conversation in a different direction, but it's an important one too. But I think we're going to do it as a separate conversation so that we can just keep the subjects pretty clean. I'm going to drop this here. We will have a conversation or a discussion of tablet 5 and the Emerald tablets. I think that's the next one we're at. I'll double check, but I think we're up to 5. So definitely be on the lookout for that one. And until then, until the next time, peace and blessings to you. And again, happy your Independence Day too, even if it isn't your country of residence's Independence Day, wherever you're watching. Your Independence Day is when you say so. So happy Independence Day to you. I love you, soul family. Peace and blessings to you. Namaste.